My name is John Avlon. I'm a columnist for the Daily Beast and author of the book Wingnuts, How the Lunatic Fringe is Hijacking America, An Independent Nation, How Centrists Can Change American Politics. There's sort of a myth that's imposed upon us that our country is deeply divided and the only two choices you have as an active citizen who cares about politics is a choice between the far left and the far right, which is fundamentally a lie. It's not how most Americans vote. It's not how most Americans think. And part of what I try to do in my work is to tell people that they're not alone. If they feel politically homeless in the polarized political debates we've got, that they're not alone. In fact, independents are the largest and fastest growing segment of the electorate, not Democrats or Republicans. Very often we're given false choices, and the political system itself has been rigged to try to reinforce those false choices, to try to create safe seats, to try to perpetuate the two parties' control and power. But there is a massive change coming, bubbling up from grassroots citizens who realize the kind of polarized debates that dominate our politics don't actually lead towards problem solving. And that is, I think, one of the most exciting, important places in politics today, but it's also one of the most underappreciated and underdiscussed. There is a large grouping that clusters under that term, but what we can tell very clearly about independent voters are, as the two parties are more polarized than ever before on every issue, that independent voters are closer to the center. But it's not a split the difference approach. They tend to be closer to Republicans on economic issues and closer to Democrats on social issues. And I think it's reflecting a generational change that's occurring. Many folks in my generation, many folks will say, well, I'm fiscally conservative, but I'm socially liberal. That's sort of the common sense, that's the no-brainer for a rising generation. And neither party really reaches out to those folks. So that's part of the disconnect. I think the other massive change you've got is that we're a generation that's grown up with a multiplicity of choice on every front except politics. Politics is the last place that we are supposed to be satisfied with a choice between brand A and brand B. And I think the political parties want to keep playing politics by industrial age rules. That's what they're comfortable with. That's how they've operated for a long, long time. And so they've tried very hard not to wake up to information age reality. But at the end of the day, one of the things the internet does is it disaggregates middlemen. And the parties are fundamentally middlemen. They were enablers of democracy at one point. They're increasingly obstacles to an open democracy. And it's worth remembering that the Founding Fathers took a pretty dim view of hyperpartisanship, that George Washington did not join a party as a matter of principle. And in his farewell address, he warned against the rise of parties and hyperpartisanship because he felt it could turn citizens against one another. Remember, they were very concerned about the dangers of faction. And that's something we too often forget in our debates today when we sort of get fed this bill of goods that there's nothing more American than a no-holds-barred ideological battle. Well, it's just not true. And the most effective representative American leaders in our political history tend to be folks who form new coalitions, who move the country forward, not left or right. If you really look at the Founding Fathers, if you really look at the message they wanted to import, look at the national motto, E pluribus unum, out of many one. The fundamental reality of American life, the fundamental idea that I think the whole foundation of our culture is built on, is that there is more that unites us than divides us as Americans. That is an idea that is worth reaffirming and defending. And right now, what I think that the hyperpartisans, what the wingnuts, what I would call the wingnuts do, is they fundamentally believe that what divides us is more important than what unites us. They try to divide to conquer for very narrow personal or political profit. And I think that is a danger in our country right now. We are dividing ourselves at a time when we need to be united as much as possible to meet the great challenges we face. So that is to some extent a rediscovery of the original ideas of American citizenship. Let's focus on the areas of their common ground. And in fact, they're huge areas of common ground. Let's define them and then build on them, rather than being preoccupied by the things we disagree on and having that determine the terms of the debate. We are self-segregating ourselves into separate political realities, where people go to television stations or websites that reaffirm their own political biases instead of reaching out. That is dangerous, I think, to society. It undercuts the larger idea of citizenship. We are in danger of having our politics start to look and feel a little bit like a cult. People are treating their partisan affiliation like a religion instead of realizing that America is our common shared faith. That needs to be the focus and attention's on. And politicians will pay lip service to that, but they spend the rest of the time trying to undercut it, focusing on what's good for the party. It's this idea of my team against yours. Fundamentally, we are all on the same team, people. That idea is at the heart of active citizenship. We've gotten in the habit of demonizing people who disagree with us. But our political opponents are not our enemies. They are our fellow citizens. We can have, or we used to be able to have, constructive conversations. We can disagree about issues, but we can disagree agreeably and then go have a drink at the end of the day. That's what congressmen used to do. They don't anymore. And that tone comes from the top. It starts trickling down. You've got the big sort where like-minded Americans are moving into the same neighborhoods. We start to effectively deny the individuality of people who think differently than us. That's very dangerous for a country, especially when we start using hate and fear to pump up hyperpartisanship, which is how the talk radio model works, using tension, conflict, fear, and resentment to pump up ratings every day. Calling the president Hitler, a tyrant, a terrorist. Well, I believe that if you only are offended by the president of your party being compared to Hitler, then you're part of the problem. That's the idea of citizenship we need to reaffirm. It's a common ground approach of common standards that I think we are losing in this idea of us against them, this teamsmanship that is infecting and poisoning the civic well that we all drink from. First thing you do is just take the ideological blinders off and you vote for the person, not the party. That's a common sense value that most Americans get, but the parties don't tend to like to elevate that. If you determine that you're going to vote for the person, not the party, you're going to figure out who's doing the better job of reaching out across the party lines to actually solve problems rather than just the play to the base politics that are very dominant today, you will help dislodge the stalemate that we are in. I mean, the good news is that there are more of us than there are of them. There are more independents than Democrats or Republicans, but the two parties are totally in denial about that right now. They don't want to deal with that fact because it makes their lives a lot more complicated. And yet what you've got is something incredibly exciting. More and more Americans declaring their independence from the two parties as the parties themselves have gotten more and more polarized. What I think we need to do is be the change we want to see. If you're tired of the hyperpartisanship in our politics, if you think it's leading to the dysfunction in our country, if you think it's one of the greatest challenges we face because it's stopping us from solving the real challenges we face, then you need to declare your independence. You need to straighten your civic backbone and start speaking up and standing up. Because right now, effectively, we've enabled the extremes to hijack our politics. And that's why we're in the fix we're in. Being a serious citizen means being actively invested in the success of American society, recognizing that this is still a great experiment, and it depends on each of us to take ownership for its larger success. The government's not there to do everything for you. The American idea is that we're going to welcome everybody in who's law-abiding, who works hard and plays by the rules. And the job of government is to create a framework within which people can live their lives to the best of their ability. But it does fundamentally require our participation. Some people look cynically about politics and they say, politics is just about the pursuit of power. I think politics matters because politics is history in the present tense. It is our ability to try to create a better future, which means building a better history for future generations, to taking that responsibility over the opportunity of this moment, which seems to me sacred. One of the geniuses of the Founding Fathers is that they understood that human beings are self-interested and tried to figure out a way to harness that self-interest that would still benefit the concept of the common good. And that it's a balance. It is not either or. It is not the triumph of individuals alone. It is not the triumph of community. It is about balancing the individual and the community. That is part of the role of a serious citizen, is achieving that balance. Your responsibilities don't end at your doorstep. Just, as they used to say during the Cold War, that partisanship ought to end at the water's edge, because we're all in this together. Your stake in the success of your city or town does not stop at the walls of your home. And too many people, I think, have gotten in an attitude with their community or their city or their government or their culture where it's someone else's problem. And they just point fingers because we've gotten very much into an us against them mindset. And there's a danger that people right now can just say, screw it. I'll go look after me and mine. The game is rigged. The screamers dominate the debate. Why do I want to waste my time or emotion? I certainly don't want to get involved in politics. And I think when we allow the extremes to hijack the debate, we encourage that kind of apathy or disengagement. And I think that's dangerous to democracy because democracies depend on citizen engagement. I think the problem is we have devalued the idea of citizenship, that balance between rights and responsibilities that makes a society function. And that is the price of citizenship. And that is what we need to accept and act on. I believe that one of the things we need to do is stand up to extremism wherever we see it. Stand up to extremism on both sides to stop the cycle of incitement that we are in. If you're only preoccupied with criticizing extremes on one side, you feed into the larger problem. The American experiment is unique because we're the only country that's founded upon an idea rather than grows out of a tribal affiliation. The core idea of America, the core idea of being a serious citizen to me in the 21st century means we must transcend our tribalism. That is the challenge, whether it's a racial or ethnic identity or a political or religious affiliation. We can hold those things as part of our own interesting differences. But our responsibility as serious citizens is to transcend that tribalism, to focus on what unites us, not what divides us. That's the core promise of America. That's what we need to follow through and reaffirm every generation.
Fathers died. Ooh, yeah. From every mountainside, let free